Dr. Elara Hayes sat alone in her lab, illuminated only by the dim glow of her laptop screen. The world outside was in chaos, but her mind was razor-sharp, focused on one thing: finding the origin of the virus that had brought humanity to its knees. What had once been a thriving global population had now dwindled into clusters of survivors, barely clinging to life. It started with a single case, Patient Zero. There were no warning signs, no initial symptoms that stood out. By the time the world realized what was happening, it was too late. The infected were everywhere, spreading the zombie virus like wildfire. Society collapsed in a matter of months. Elara had always been a believer in science, and she was convinced that the key to stopping the pandemic lay in its origins. She had spent months combing through data, chasing rumors, and analyzing the mutated strain of the virus. But now, finally, she had a lead: a piece of DNA from an ancient virus found in a remote cave in the Amazon rainforest. Could this be it? She whispered to herself, her fingers trembling as she zoomed in on the genetic sequence. The pattern was eerily similar to the zombie virus, but it was far older, ancient even. She packed her equipment. It was time to go into the field. The rainforest was a world apart from the concrete ruins of the cities. Thick canopies of trees blocked out the sun, and the constant hum of insects filled the air. Elara, accompanied by a small team of mercenaries for protection, trekked deeper into the jungle. The cave that contained the ancient virus sample was rumored to be near a forgotten village, one that had mysteriously disappeared centuries ago. Legends spoke of a sickness that had wiped out the inhabitants. No one had ever connected it to the zombie virus, until now. As they neared the location, the atmosphere shifted. It was quiet, too quiet. The mercenaries exchanged nervous glances, gripping their weapons tighter. The jungle, usually teeming with life, felt dead. "Stay alert," said their leader, a grizzled man named Torres. "This place gives me the creeps." Elara ignored the warning, her mind racing with excitement. If the virus was truly ancient, it meant humanity had encountered it before, and survived. There had to be some clue in the village that could help them now. They reached the cave at dusk. The entrance was hidden behind thick vines and moss, barely visible to the untrained eye. Elara's heart raced as she stepped inside, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air was thick with the smell of decay. Torres motioned for silence. Something was wrong. The hairs on the back of Elara's neck stood up. She heard it then, a faint shuffling sound, like footsteps dragging across the cave floor. "Did you hear that?" one of the mercenaries whispered, his voice shaky. Before anyone could answer, the source of the noise revealed itself. Figures emerged from the shadows, their eyes hollow, skin pale and stretched tight over their bones. Zombies. But these were different. They moved faster, more deliberately than the mindless creatures that plagued the cities. "They're not like the others," Torres shouted, opening fire. The gunshots echoed off the cave walls, but the bullets did little to slow them down. Elara ducked behind a rock, her mind racing. These creatures weren't ordinary zombies, they were something more primal, closer to the original virus. She had to get a sample. In the chaos, one of the mercenaries was grabbed, dragged into the darkness as his screams echoed through the cave. Torres yelled for a retreat, and Elara followed reluctantly. They couldn't fight these things head-on. Outside, they regrouped, panting and shaken. Elara had managed to grab a small piece of tissue from one of the creatures during the attack, her gloved hand still clutching the vial. "We need to get this back to the lab," she said breathlessly. Torres glared at her. That was suicide in there. "What were those things?" "Evolution," she replied grimly. "This virus has been around a lot longer than we thought." Back at her temporary field lab, Elara worked feverishly, analyzing the sample. The genetic sequence was nearly identical to the modern zombie virus, but with key differences. It was older, more resilient. "What if this is the original strain?" she muttered, pacing around the lab. "If we can find out how it spread, we might be able to stop it, or at least understand it." Her mind wandered to the village. There had to be more information there, something that explained how the virus had gone dormant for centuries. But returning to that cave seemed suicidal. Just then, one of the mercenaries, a young woman named Riley, burst into the lab. "You need to see this," she said, eyes wide with fear. Elara followed her outside to where Torres and the rest of the team were gathered. In the distance, smoke billowed from the direction of the cave. Zombies, dozens of them, were emerging from the trees, heading toward their camp. "We need to leave now," Torres growled, his face pale. "There's too many of them." But as the zombies approached, Elara noticed something strange. They weren't attacking. They were gathering, like a swarm, their eyes all fixed on her. "They're following me," she whispered in horror. Suddenly, it all made sense. The virus wasn't just a disease, it had evolved into something more intelligent, something that could control its hosts. And it had recognized her as a threat. "We can't outrun them," she said, backing away. "We have to find a way to stop them." But how? The survivors retreated to a nearby abandoned research station, a relic from decades past. There, Elara continued her research, piecing together fragments of data from old records and the new samples she had taken. The virus was unlike anything she had ever encountered. It could adapt, change, and even manipulate its hosts. It had been lying dormant for centuries, waiting for the perfect moment to re-emerge. And now, it was evolving rapidly. Elara worked day and night, knowing that the zombies were closing in. The others fortified the station, preparing for a last stand. But Elara wasn't giving up. She was so close to a breakthrough. Finally, she found it, a weakness in the virus's genetic code. It had a failsafe, a way to deactivate itself if it was exposed to a certain protein found in a rare plant native to the Amazon. The village elders must have known about it, which is why they had survived for so long. But there was a problem, the plant was extinct. Or so she thought. Elara remembered something, a dried specimen of the plant, stored in the old research station's archives. She rushed to the storage room, her heart pounding in her chest. If she could synthesize the protein, they might have a chance. With the zombies closing in, Elara worked faster than she ever had before. The others held the line as best they could. But the creatures were relentless, breaking through the barricades with terrifying speed. Finally, Elara finished the serum. She injected it into a captured zombie, watching as the creature spasmed violently before collapsing to the ground. Motionless. "It works!" she shouted. "It works!" But it wasn't over yet. The serum had to be distributed across the entire infected population, a near impossible task. As the zombies breached the final defenses, Elara knew what had to be done. She grabbed the serum and ran toward the horde, injecting herself with the only remaining dose. The virus inside the zombies recognized her as its creator, its master. They stopped in their tracks, confused and disoriented. Slowly, one by one, they collapsed, freed from the virus's control. Elara sank to the ground, exhausted but victorious. The virus had been stopped, but at a great cost. The world was forever changed. But there was hope. Hope that humanity could rise from the ashes of the pandemic and rebuild. As the sun rose over the Amazon, Elara Hayes knew that the fight was far from over. But for the first time in months, she allowed herself to believe that they could win.